Hey everyone, this is John Morgan. I want to welcome you to our web conference today. I am super excited. I have to tell you that best practices is always my absolute hands down favorite webinar that we do every year. There's nothing cooler than sharing all the little tips and tricks that make us all more efficient, more effective in what we do, because the faster we can work, the more accurate we are when we work, the more money we're going to make at the end of the day. So I love being able to share these tips with you. I have them listed 1 through 17. We will stop at each one, and I'll give you a cover page where you can see what we're about to talk about. And then I will jump into 2020 live and show you exactly how to use that feature. Now, the very first one I want to talk about is invisible light fixtures. And, we really want to create renderings to just blow away our customers. When we show it to them, they want to buy it from us. Let's go ahead and switch to 2020 live now. We'll go right on over, and you'll see that I have a floor plan. And I'm going to zoom in on this island right here, and there are 3 lights on this island. Now, I'm going to bring up a perspective of this kitchen for just a moment because I want to talk a little bit about the lights and the options within the lights. Let me shift it down just a little. You saw my 3 lights at the top. Now, as this starts to render, I want you to notice on the countertop that you see a little crisscross area here and here. And if I take my lights, and I'm going to dim them for effect so you can see exactly what I'm about to do. Let's go ahead and dim the lights in the whole room, and you're going to notice that there are lights shining down right where I'm circling here and here. Anthony's put in a couple of light fixtures from SketchUp. Now, light fixtures in SketchUp do not have light sources the way a light fixture from 2020 would. So oftentimes, higher-end designers are taking lighting components and combining them together to really get light dispersion patterns to make this countertop just pop and wow for your customer. Well, there's a really cool way for you to add additional light to this room, but make the light source itself invisible so that you don't see a black puck kind of hanging out there in the middle of space. You can actually make that completely invisible, yet there will be a light source in that area. So let me show you how we would do that. Now, right here is a light that's been placed from SketchUp. And again, it does not have a lighting component at all. If I want to add a light to this, I'm going to go over to my catalogs. I'm going to go up to the catalog called Room FUR. That is Room Furniture. That's where you find lighting. I'll double click on lighting. And when we load lighting here, I'm going to go right to recessed light. And I'm going to choose a spotlight, and I'm going to drag it, and I'm simply going to move it over, and I'm going to put it right in the middle of this SketchUp light that we brought in. Just a little trick I'm going to use too, I'm going to hold the Control and the Shift key down so that it doesn't try to snap to any edges, and I can put this right in the dead center. I just did that. Now let me show you a few things that I can do to this light. Number 1, if I right-click on this light, I can change its properties. Meaning I can change the brightness. And I'm going to make this really bright, obnoxiously bright, brighter than I would normally. That way I make sure you see it. And then down here at the bottom where it reads Profile, I can choose the light dispersion pattern. I could say bollard if I wanted to spread out more. I could go down to a tight focus beam, which is what I'm going to use right now. And I can even use the color, change the color of the light. I'm just going to make this a pure white light. I'm going to click OK. Now, I'm also going to right-click on this light because I need to move it up and down. As you know, when you place a light in the room, it wants to place it at the ceiling. Well, this shouldn't be in the ceiling. It actually needs to be light emanating from inside of the light fixture. So I've already gone in and tested this, and the light itself should be at 75 and 5/16 inches off of the floor. I'll change that. These are all things you're probably already doing. Let me show you the cool thing that Anthony taught me. If I right-click on this and I go to the attributes, you'll see a preview of the light right here. You see this black disc. And again, that's what we do not want to see. We want to make this invisible. So if we're going to make this invisible, all we need to do is go to Variables. And under Variables, this is the place that you'll typically go to change textures and such. What you may not know is there's a feature called Properties. If you click on Properties, it'll say Display in 3D, yes. I'm going to click on the arrow next to that and say no. The light has disappeared. Actually, the light fixture has become invisible, but the light itself will still be there. So if we look right now, properties again, I changed the display 3D to no. When I click OK, we're going to go back and take a look at that rendering again. So let's go back to our rendering. We're going to click on it and watch when it re-renders. Look how bright this is now. Remember I told you I made that way too bright? I wanted to make sure it showed up for you. See the little crisscross here? That's actually the cage on the bottom of the light. So you'll see different light dispersion patterns across this countertop, and we added that light and we made it invisible. So if I tilt up, you will not see the light that we brought in from 2020 to enhance the SketchUp image. All you see is light shining down from inside the image because we made it invisible. Pretty cool feature. So again, that was something that was taught to me, and I really appreciated it and wanted to pass it on. Let's go to tip number 2. Tip number 2 is, how do you transform floor plan shapes to dashed lines? Now you're going to be interested in making changes to floor plan shapes. Matter of fact, the next item I'm going to show you, both of these are very fast features, but the next one I'm going to show you is going to talk about center lines as well. These types of changes that you make to the floor plan help you improve your presentation accuracy. And I get a lot of questions about how do we change the floor plan? How do we change the elevation to meet the needs, especially in our higher end design communities? If I come back down here again and I click, and I'm going to switch right back to my 2020, I want you to notice a couple of things. Number one, see this light fixture? It has a broken or dashed line around it. Oftentimes, a dashed line will be used to indicate something. For instance, maybe a cabinet underneath of a countertop. Well, if you wanted to show this cabinet as a dashed line, you can simply right-click on the cabinet. It'll show as a dashed line. Or maybe you wanted to show the countertop as a dashed line. Here's how you do that. You right-click on it, and when you right-click on it, you choose the item, and there's an option called Display Settings. Most of us skip over display settings most of the time. You don't realize what's there. If I go to display settings, though, this allows me to control things like font, the appearance of lines, even dimensions. You'll notice at the top here where it says outline, if I put a little check mark next to dash and click apply, my countertop has now become a dashed line. I could take any object. I could right-click on this light fixture. So let's go to the light fixture. I'll pop down here into display settings. I'll put a little check mark next to the dashed line. By the way, I can even change the color of the line if I want to. If I click OK, that's now a dashed line. Now, if we go back over to our presentation for a second, my next item is in a very similar area. It's called Show Center Lines on a Floor Plan. Again, to improve your presentation accuracy. That's the benefit to you. If we switch to 2020, we'll go back over to the plan. Let's zoom out a little bit. I work like most of you. When I design, I like to have just basic wall dimensions, window, door dimensions, and so forth. But there are items in the room that I want to make sure that I get a center line for. Most of us have already preset all of our dimensions to show center lines on windows or doors. But there are times where you'll want a center line on the sink. You want a center line on an appliance. You might even want center lines on your lighting fixtures. Well, you can add individual center lines to a floor plan anytime you want. It's the same exact place where I went for the dash line. If I right-click on an item, in this case, I'm right-clicking on the range. So let's highlight the range. I'm going to go down to Display Settings, click on it. Item was where we were just a moment ago. If I go to Dimensions, I can actually click on Dimensions, and I can tell it to show the dimensions. Now, before I do that, though, I want you to notice something. It gives me options for left, right, in and out, continuous length, continuous center, and rotation angle. Well, I'm really interested in continuous center, so that is already checked marked on my system because I use that often. If I want the continuous center to turn on, all I have to do is put a check mark next to Display. If I click on Display and I click OK, this will add a continuous center line for my range. Right now, my range is centered at 93 7/16 of an inch. Again, I can click on any item. I can click on a light fixture if I wanted to. I can go to Display Settings. I can click on Dimensions, and all I need to do is put a check mark next to Display, and it will show me whatever I click in the boxes below. Center line would be right here. That's all I need to do to make my floor plans more accurate in presentation. Now let's come back out again. Let's pop back over and let's go to the next tip. Tip number 4, mirror items. This is one of my all-time favorites. This is something I've actually used for years in 2020, and I will tell you that I believe that this is something that you probably, if you haven't been using it, wished you had been using it for the last couple of years, simply because of the success of single-family home construction and multi-family or multi-unit construction. All of us are selling much, much more when it comes in the multi-unit world. And when you have a multi-unit, they're often going to be left and right of the same model. You don't want to design them twice. You just want to design them once and be able to flip them. So what we're going to do is we're going to jump over to our floor plan, and I will show you that I actually have 4 floor plans open live. Let me switch over to a different floor plan, and I will demonstrate this application for you. Now, here is a floor plan of a small apartment or such. Bedroom, bathroom, kitchen, laundry room, closet. If I draw a box around this, and before I do that, let me zoom in for a second. You'll see right now that I have a wall 12, 30 left and a base 15 left. Okay? I'm pointing that out because when I flip plans in 2020, the hinging flips as well, just like it needs to in real life. So if I highlight all the items, I just drew a box, I lassoed them by holding my left button down. If I go to Home and I choose Mirror Items, if I click on Mirror, all I need to do is follow the directions right here, and I'm going to draw a line. I'm just going to click with my mouse and draw a little line. That's basically telling us where on the piece of paper we're going to fold it to flip it. If I left click, it's going to ask me a question. Do you want to delete the original item? I will say yes. My plan has been reversed. Matter of fact, if I zoom in, you'll notice that my B15 left is now a base 15 right. So I can do a quick takeoff. I can place an order. I did not have to redraw this kitchen. Now let me go ahead and hit undo. I'm going to go back to where we were before, and I'm going to tell it to flip again. I'm going to go to Home. I'm going to click Mirror. Remember, you have to select everything. I'm going to click Mirror. When I click Mirror, this time when I draw that line, it's going to ask me, do you want to delete the original? I'm going to say no. Watch what happens now. You actually end up with both plans on your screen at the same time. So take a second, it'll pop it in. There we go. We actually have both plans on the same time, the original and the mirror image, including the flipped hinges. Oftentimes when I'm working with companies that are selling builders and multifamily, they'll do this automatically. They'll create like a template plan like this, and then whenever they need to do Unit F, Unit B, whatever it's going to be, they simply come into the template, highlight the unit that they're going to use, copy it onto a new piece of paper, and they're ready to rock and roll with it. So again, saving you time, because time is money to you. Now, let me go ahead and close out of this. And we're going to go back in and we're going to work on another plan. So let's go back to another tip. Tip number 5, color matching via the eyedropper. Just real quick, a raise of hands. Who knows what the eyedropper is? All right. Some of you do, some of you don't. Let me tell you what the eyedropper is really great for. The eyedropper is great for making a perspective realistic in the actual tones and colors of the paints that you're going to use or textures that you're going to use in a room. Haven't you thought to yourself before, listen, I'm going to use Sherwin-Williams, or I'm going to use Benjamin Moore, I'm going to use Faro and Ball paint, and I really wish that I could put an exact color on the wall of my renderings to show my client what that's going to look like? Well, you can do that, and let me show you how you do that. So let's go ahead and switch back over again. We're going to go back over to our 2020. And let me open up my perspective real quick, and let's brighten the room so that you can see the far wall. So let's brighten this room a little bit. I'm going to look over here, and you'll see that my far wall is a lovely shade of gray right now. Well, we're going to change that. Now, here's how we would change that. Let me take my floor plan, and I'm going to drag this over to the left and snap it into place. And on the right, you're going to notice I am already in Faro and Ball's website. So I could come over to my floor plan. I could double click on a wall, any wall. Now, I already know that the walls in that living space are walls, hold on just a second, 1, 4, 5, and 10. I went ahead and I cheated and I looked to see which ones were in that living space to begin with. How I selected the walls as a multi-select was I held the control key down and I clicked on each of those walls. Now, once I've clicked on them, I can go to material. And you all know how to place textures. You put tiles on walls, tiles on floors, maybe you import your own fabric patterns and so forth. Well, it's the same thing. I'm going to go into material. And right here where it says finish, I am going to click on the browse button. When I click on the browse button, my texture screen appears. So you'll see, whoops, hold on just a second here. I did that too quick. Let me go back down to my texture screen. There we go. Let me let me close out of my texture screen. Let me do that again. I made it full screen. I did not mean to make it full screen. Hold on, sorry about that. So we will adjust this. Let me just move it down a little bit, and I'm going to move it over here to the left. There we go. Sorry about that. I got delayed. It kept snapping into the wrong screen. I wanted to show you a left-right experience here. So if I go into user texture, which is the third option, this will show me all of the textures that I have already loaded into my system. Now, if you look over here, this is the Faro and Ball actual paint collection. So I can scroll down and find a paint that I would like to use. Let's go down to a blue. So let's say that we find Cook's Blue. See Cook's Blue right here? If I go back over to my 2020 texture menu, if you look right here where my arrow is, there's an eyedropper. If I take that eyedropper and I drag it over to Cook's Blue and let it go, it copied that color right into 2020. Matter of fact, I can go in and name it. I can call this Cook's, hold on just a second, I can call this Cook's Blue. Just typed in a name. We can go down here, give it a description, give it a color name, do whatever I want, even change the size of it. I can even come in and change whether it's glossy or flat or such. Now, once I drag, and again, what I did was I took the eyedropper and I simply dragged it over to the color that I wanted. When I dragged it over and I let the eyedropper go, it copied Cook's Blue. If I click OK, and I click OK again, let's go back and actually make our screen full screen now. So let's go back in here and make it full screen. And let's go take a look at our perspective. You'll notice that the wall in the living space is now Faro and Ball, Cook's Blue. So you can really go in and add the actual colors to your room. That's pretty awesome. I have to tell you that right now I'm in the middle of a bath remodel. And I have designed our master bath, and I've been working with my family going through and picking the colors and dropping the colors into the master bath so they can see exactly what the master bath paint color is going to look like with all the cool tile textures that we're implementing as well. So that's pretty cool. That's one of my favorite features. That's the eyedropper. Let's come back over here again. Let's take a look at our next tip, which is tip number 6. Now let me talk a little bit about this. Some of you are familiar with this and some not. Some of you have used tools like Magic Plan in the past. Let me talk a little bit about improving your accuracy in measuring and how you can implement that in 2020. First of all, let's go over to 2020 and let me show you where you would import, where you could actually bring in dimensions from other partners of ours. You can go over to File, and there's an option here called Import. If you click Import, you'll see your partner's name listed here. You can click on it and actually import dimensions. Now, what I mean by importing dimensions is this. A tool like Magic Plan, which is an app you can download on your phone, actually allows you or people that work with you, or technically, I guess, even your client, to go out and take pictures lining up in the corners of the room, and it will measure a room. And I say measure. It gives you a close to, accurate dimensions on the walls. Gives you kind of a general overview so that you can start in a plan. Now, this image, once you take these pictures, they can actually be loaded right into 2020, and you can start designing. All you have to do is click Import to bring that in. You just need the app, and you need to import. Now, there's other ways that we can do this and where you can actually be even more accurate. You could be going out and laser measuring your room. You could use a tool like InnoDraw here where you could go out and laser measure your room, your corner to corner, your window trims to window trims, your doorways and so forth. And if you look at my little diagram here, what happens is if you have a tool like this, a laser measurer, it'll automatically open up into an InnoDraw drawing, which then is connected through a cloud server to 2020 where we can import it. And once you import it into 2020, that means that you do not have to draw. It means that the walls are accurate because it's been laser measured. You simply bring the walls into 2020, and then you sit down and start working right away. So all you would do at that point is you would actually go into 2020, you would click on File, you would click on Import, bring the image in, and you would see a floor plan just like this where you could start putting your own cabinets in and designing with accurately measured rooms. Pretty cool. We're seeing a lot more integration from beginning to end when it comes to software. Now, our next tip in the system is going to be tip number 7, which is designing with cathedral ceilings. I will tell you that I get tons and tons and tons of questions about ceiling height changes. When we design today, we're really doing a fully immersive room. Clients want to know what they see when they look right and forward and left and behind them. If they look down, if they look up, they want it to look like the space they're going to live in. And because of the success of our Inspiration Design Awards that we've run now 2 straight years, you'll go in and see a lot of those great drawings have awesome ceiling lines. Let me show you a real quick trick when it comes to changing ceiling heights, when it comes to slants, slopes, cathedrals, and such. So in 2020, I'm going to open up another drawing here. So let's go over to View. I already have open a drawing here that I call Tip Webinar Cathedral. Now what I did was, just to save a little time, I've already drawn a big rectangular room. I know it looks like a square. It's actually a rectangle. Now, if we go in and look, I want you to notice something. It looks like 4 walls. It is not. This drawing is actually 6 walls. And if I zoom in right here, you'll see there's a little faint line right here. And if I were to double-click on this left-hand wall, you'll notice that under Properties, it'll say wall number 1 is actually divided in 2 pieces, Section 1 and Section 2. Matter of fact, wall number 3 is divided into 2 pieces as well, Section 1 and Section 2. So I have a wall that's 300 inches in length. But I took the first 80 inches and I stopped, and then I drew another wall 120. This is what I did. Let me just give you a quick example of that. I went to Room Layout. I clicked on Continuous. I'll click right here on a wall, and I'll draw up. And let's say I type in 80 on my keyboard, hit Enter. Then I took my mouse, and I simply rotated the next section to point up, and I typed in 220. Enter. I actually have drawn 1 wall, but it's in 2 pieces, even though 2020 thinks it's 1 wall. So let's go ahead and delete this wall, and let's come back to this plan. Now, if I take a quick look at this, let's go in and do a rendering of this. I want you to notice that when a rendering comes up, this is just a big old gray rectangular room. Nothing special about this yet. Okay? If we come back down again, though, and I double-click on any wall, doesn't matter, I can double-click on any wall, I can change the ceiling heights based on the walls. So if you look down here where it says height of the wall is 96, and it ends at 96. That means it starts at 96 and it ends at 96. So I could take Section 1, and there's a little button right here that says use the same height for both ends. If I turn that off and then come down here to end and type in 144, I just told the system to take wall Section 1, start at 96 inches high, but have it go up to 144. I can then go to Section 2, turn the check mark off. That's the key. I can say Section 2 actually starts at 144, but it's going to slope back down or slant back down to 96. Now, I need to do the same exact thing on the opposite side of the room. So I'm going to go over to Section 1, turn the check mark off. I'm going to say it's 144, but it slopes down to 96. Then I can go to Section 2, turn the check mark off. You see a little pattern here. Turn the check mark off. That gives you the ability to do it. I'll say it's 144 to 96. Once I've changed those 4 pieces, there's one more thing we want to do, and this is really, really important. We want to go to the tab called Type. If I click on Type, at the very bottom it says Ceiling, and it tells me when does it want it to connect to the ceiling. Depends on the height of the wall, which means if you draw a knee wall, it won't connect it to the ceiling. I actually want all these walls to connect to the ceiling because I want to create that visual, that image of the ceiling. So I'm going to put a check mark next to Connect to Ceiling. When I click OK, we're going to come back out of here and we're going to take a quick look again. Let's open up our perspective again. And you'll see that I didn't save something right. So let me go back in again. Let me double check. I did not save my dimensions properly. So let's go in here. We'll say start at 96, went to 144. Section number 2, 144 to 96. Section number 3 was 144 to 96. And section number 2, this is the one I didn't save properly, started at 144 and went to 96. There we go. So now let's come back out of here and take a quick look. And you'll see as we start to work here that the ceiling is actually sloped just like we talked about. I can actually move in, I can move out, I can work on these walls and go through. It looks like I still messed up the one on the other side, but I can change that. But this gives you a quick idea of how we do that. I can actually even come into the room. I can stand inside of this room and look up and see the ceiling exactly the way I need it to be. So I apologize, I must have typed 144 first on that other wall, but we can always go back and make a quick change, but I won't do that now because I want to move on to the next session. So let's go ahead and we'll close out of here, and let's go on to the next item. Actually, let me leave this open for a second. Okay. Now, before we do that, let me correct this wall because I want to show you an elevation real quick. So this should have been 96, and this one should have been 144. There we go. Let me double check number 2. So we should be good to go now. Okay. Now, my next item is going to be in the PowerPoint. Number 8 is going to be how do you show multiple elevations? I get this question all the time. People want to see multiple elevations on the screen all at the same time. So if we switch back over here, we go back into our plan, and we choose the floor plan. If I hold the Control key down on my keyboard, I can click on a wall. Notice when I click on a wall, I get these little blue points on the ends. If I hold the Control key down, that allows me to multi-select. I can click on that wall, and that wall. Now, when I double-click in any of those spaces, if you give it a second, it's going to open up 3 elevations for me, and I can see all 3 wall elevations. Matter of fact, if I want to, I can design. I can go into base cabinets. Actually, let me just type it in. I'll say B36. I can take a base 36 and drop it on the elevation. I can move it anywhere I want. There's my B36. I can come down here and say I needed to get a wall 3630. Let's choose one with glass doors. I can drag that and put it on the floor plan this time. I don't have to put it on the elevation. I can put it on the floor plan, and you'll see it's active in both places. Pretty cool. And I was able to do that because I held the Control key down. And I clicked on this wall, and then that wall. Once I selected all 3 walls, I double-clicked on the plan, and it opened up automatically. And you have 3 working elevations on the screen at the same time. Next item is going to be number 9, and this is how do you default the 3D line elevations? Hopefully a lot of you have seen me do that many times. That's actually one of the most popular questions that I get. So I like to go back and show that in just about any webinar because it's still one of the most popular questions that I get. And what we mean by this question is when you're looking at the floor plan and the elevation area, if I zoom in, you'll notice the elevation is very plain. It's just cabinets with boxes with the labels on the boxes and some dimensions. You really want to see that it's a shaker door or a square raised panel door. You want to know where the hardware is. You want to be able to go in and make additional annotations to the screen, things like that. Well, if you go to the button over here on the left called File, we go down to Preferences. There's an option under Preferences. I'm going to move this over so you can see my screen. Now, you're going to be watching right here. See where I'm circling? You're going to be watching the wall cabinet and the base cabinet. If I go to Work Area, so again, I'm in Preferences, File, Preferences, Work Area. There's a button right here that says 3D Shape and Elevation. If I click on that and click Apply, watch what happens to these 2 cabinets. You can now see that this is a glass mullion door. You can see that this is a cabinet with 2 doors, a single drawer front. You can determine where hardware is and so forth. Much, much, much more detailed. Now, I have multiple drawings open right now, so I don't want to change the other things I'm doing in the webinar, so I'm going to change it back. But normally what you would do is you would simply put a check mark next to Display 3D. You would then click OK, and it permanently saves that change for every kitchen that you do going forward. And again, I'm going to switch mine back right now so it doesn't save it for my other kitchens. We'll go ahead and we'll move forward, and we will close out of this rendering, and we'll move on to our next tip in our session. The next tip is going to be assigning names to perspectives. Now, why would you be interested in that? Well, you would be interested in that because it actually optimizes the speed in your presentations. You don't have to recreate renderings all the time, and all the renderings that we have are what is called dynamic, meaning if you change something on the floor plan, it'll automatically change it in your perspective as well. Even if the perspective's not open, it'll change it for you. So let me show you how to save perspectives. So we're going to go over here, and we're going to click on a perspective. So you'll see right now I have a perspective, so I could, let's say we walk into the family room here. So we're going to walk into the family room, we're going to turn, and we're going to watch hockey on the TV. I'll back up a little bit, and we're going to watch hockey on the TV and look at the beautiful snow in the mountains. I want to save this as a view. Well, if we go down to the very bottom down here, there's a little space, all the way to the bottom right-hand side. A little space down here has an arrow next to it. It says Save. If I click there, I can call this living space and click Save. I can then turn my image and say I want to look back and get a full kitchen view. Well, I can come down to that space at the bottom and type in full kitchen. I can hit Save. I can then zoom in, and maybe we tilt it a little bit. Maybe we tilt it down. Oops, I went too far. And I want to get a quick look back over the island. So I'm just going to say island. So we'll come in here and say island. We'll click Save View, and that's the view we have. And then I could also kind of come into the room if I wanted to. I could turn, look back across my room, and say I'm going to look back, back towards the living space. I'm just going to call this, sink wall. So I'm just giving these names. Now, what's cool about this is this is your last rendering, sink wall. But anytime you want, you can either at the bottom here change. See, if I click this arrow here and I scroll down, it actually gives me all these different save views, sink wall, island, full kitchen living space. Or even better yet, if I closed out of this rendering, anytime I want, I can go up the presentation while I'm working. Maybe I'm presenting it to a customer. I can click on this arrow and say, hey, you know what? Let's take a look at the living space. When we click on this, it'll load the rendering as to that vantage point. Now, the nice thing about this is not only does it load the rendering to this vantage point, because I can have multiple renderings open at the same time. Not only does it load this rendering to this vantage point, but it also saves it so when I want to show multiple renderings on a single piece of paper, I have multiple views, and I can copy 2, 3, 4 on one large piece of paper and show people different perspectives of their kitchen in my presentation, all because I went to the bottom and I hit Save. Now, let's come down here real quick, and let's go to our next point, number 11, which is along the same line, annotating perspectives. Now, I always like this because I like to, I use the words in rich detail and narratives and presentation. I'm a big believer in leading people when you're selling and really talking about what we would call ROE, return on enjoyment in the rooms, not necessarily return on investment, because most of these people are going to spend the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years in that room, and you want to talk about the lifestyle change, the life change that you're helping them make. Well, there's a lot of people that present that in the fashion you're about to see right here. This is actually a perspective of Anthony's kitchen that we're working on. And I have a lot of people when they design and they make presentations, they actually walk through the kitchen and they show, where you're going to watch the football game. You're going to do dishes and watch the snow outside. Your kids are going to be doing homework here for the next 20 years. This is where you're going to have wine with your best friend. They do things like that, and I often get questions like, how do I make either detailed notes on a perspective, or I just want to make lifestyle notes on a perspective? Well, this is how you do it. Number one, you can always export the image into, PowerPoint or a program or something like that. But you can also do this. If you go into a floor plan and you go to presentation, there's an option here called drawing layout. Many of you use drawing layout when you want to show images and then you want to go in and show the tile that's going to be used or cutaways of moldings or maybe the cabinet style. If I right-click in the workspace and I choose New Tab, it gives me an option of paper and it divides it into sections. I can click on a template and say it's divided into 2 pieces, template divided into 3 pieces, template divided into 4. I have the ability to divide this any way that I want. What most people don't realize is the very first template is a single page. What that means is I can just click OK. It brings up a single page. I can right-click on the plan and simply say, bring in my named view. I can pick any view that I want. So let's just say we click on living space. I can click OK. It'll take the perspective that we just looked at. I can take this perspective. I can go up to annotations and start making notes on it. I can go in and say, I want to add a note. I'd like to add a note right here, and I'd say, drinking wine with friends. And there is no spell check on this, so I'm sorry. I know I missed a D, I think, in there. There we go. Drinking wine with friends, added a couple extra letters by accident. But we'll go ahead and we'll click OK, and there's a note. But you can say that's a little bit hard to see. That's OK, because I can always just right-click on that note. Hold on just a second here. Hold on. Let me send this to the back. There we go. I'm covering my note up. Hold on just a second. Let me just add another quick note here just so you can see what I was about to do. We'll go ahead and we'll click on it. While my note is active, I can right-click on it. I can go into its display settings. And under display settings, I can choose font, and I can choose a color. We can go in here and click on white. Go ahead and click on white, click OK. I can change font size. Let's say it's 16 points. I can click on it, click OK. There's my note. It's in white. I can make it any font that I want, really make it stand out. And by the way, I couldn't click on the other one because I actually brought the perspective to the front. I need to move it back to the back, but I'm just trying to save time, so I just put another note in. So there we go. That's how you can annotate notes right in 2020. And if you look at the bottom of the screen, it says drawing number 2, drawing number 1. I can switch back and forth between these drawings at any time. I also want you to notice that this image right here, you notice the wall's blue? If you remember, my kitchen had a gray wall to begin with. I changed it to be blue. And when I brought up this image that had been saved, weeks ago or months ago, it had changed the image to be blue as too because it's dynamic. They're actually connected to the renderings, to the changes in the floor plan. Now, let's go back to the next little tip here. So let's go into tip number 12, which is designing smart closets. So we are right on time. I have about 15, 16 more minutes. So we are designing smart closets now. And I want you to think about this. You're always looking at ways to make more money in more rooms of the home. You're doing the kitchen, you're doing the bath, you already have an installation crew there. Love to do a little bit of add-on work. But you know what? Not a lot of money in selling that closet. So you need to design that closet fast, to get somebody to sign off on it, to sell the materials, and have your crew install that while they're working in other places in the house. That's called making more money in more rooms of the home. But it's about doing it smartly. You don't want to spend days and days and days designing a closet like you did the kitchen with your client. You need to do it like that. Well, let me show you a feature in 2020 that you may not be aware of. Let's go back over to 2020 again. Let's switch to my 4th rendering. Remember, I said I had 4 renderings open. I'm going to go into the closet. I'm going to go into the closet plan. You'll notice that I have an elevation. I actually have a floor plan open that we can zoom in on, take a look at. I'm going to, in just a moment, I'm actually going to come, let me leave that there for a second. Let's pop up here and take a quick look at our closet. So we'll give it a second to render, and you'll see this is a closet that I designed really quickly. I was actually working on some videos over the weekend, and I designed, some closet and talked about decorating. By the way, all of these, like the skirt and the dresses and the shoes and purses, things like that you want to put in the closet, those are all items that you find in the 2020 cloud catalogs. I spend a lot of time in those catalogs because they're just awesome, awesome rendering ready textures and designs. So here's a quick closet. let me show you how quick it is for you to design a closet. Now, what I'm about to show you is actually a feature some of you have and some of you do not. Some of you have the closet pack already in your 2020. If you do not, you can just contact us and you can add the closet pack onto your 2020. There is a fee for that, but I think you're going to see why it's well worth your time. If we come over here, when you have the closet pack, there's actually a catalog here called Flex. And when I open this up, there's also some other brand-specific closet catalogs available as well. Let me show you how fast it is to design something like a closet, because again, the important thing for you is you need to knock this out accurately and fast, because there's not as much profit margin in this as there is in the kitchen. So you want to be able to knock it out fast, get your dollars, and move on to the next item. So if I go over here and say, let's drag some panels over, I'm going to drop it into our section, and it's going to ask me some questions on clearances, floor-mounted, wall-mounted, how many sections. I'm going to say it's 5 sections. Now, when I click OK, I can stretch this as far as I need it to be. Right now, all it's done is divided the area into 5 equal spaces, but I can always go back. I can always go back and change the size of any of these items. So I could make the left-hand unit 21 inches, but add 4 inches to the unit to the right of it, so not worry, you can do those things. But let me show you how easy it is to design a closet. You can go in and design individual components, like I could go to shelves. I could go down and get fixed shelves or adjustable shelves. So let's go down here and say we want to get a adjustable shelf. I'm going to drag it over and I'm going to drop it right here. I'm going to say I'd like to put a shelf here. I'd like to take and put a shelf here. I'd like to take, and this is smart in that it knows the 32 millimeter drilling system, so it knows exactly where these components will snap into place or be pinned into place. So I've added 4 adjustable shelves. So you could go around the room and manually design, or a lot of people do this. They just do it by section. They'll go in and say, I needed a long hanging section, so I'm going to put that right here. Click, and we give it a second. There's a hanging rod. I'd like to go put a double hanging section here. Give it a second, double hanging section. I'd like to put in, let's say, a shoe shelving section. Drop it in, click on it, and you can always modify these any way that you need to, but it'll put the shoe shelving section in, and then I'm going to go put some drawers and shelves in. Now, I want you to think about this. In literally a minute, I've gone in and done a quick layout of a closet. I can go back, make a couple adjustments. I can then sell this to the customer and add this on for my installation crew when they're out in the field. Here is my closet. I simply snapped in exactly what I needed. I can go in and decorate. I can go in and change materials, colors, change sizes, whatever I want. But again, I'm not spending lots and lots of time designing because we can't afford to spend lots and lots of time designing in a space like this. It needs to be fast and profitable, and that's what you get when you're using the closet package that's included when you add the upgrade to 2020. Now let's go ahead and close out of here, and we're going to go back to my original kitchen, and we're going to wrap up our last couple of tips from that section. Tip number 13. This is a fast one. Easy replace feature. All right, let's go back over, and this is what I mean by easy replace, and this is all about saving time. I have a really good friend locally. What he does is he likes to do, 99% of the drawings before he sits, before he and the client have their next meeting. He'll sit down, and then he has certain areas that he and the client are going to make changes in together. So what he'll do is he'll pick something. He'll say, okay, I know the client really wants, additional drawer space over here. Let's have a discussion on that. And what I can do to easily show that is simply click on the cabinet. You notice when I clicked on it, it actually gives me 4 points telling me it's highlighted. I can come over here to my search and just type in BD24. Actually, I did that backwards. It is DB24. Okay. Let me do that again. It's an 18, isn't it? 24 would not have fit in that space, and that's another cost saver to you. 2020 would not have let the 24 go into that space, so you would have not ordered the incorrect cabinet. But if we have base 18, all I have to do is right-click when this is highlighted. If I right-click on the DB18 from the left, there's an option here called Replace. When I click Replace, it actually changed that to a drawer base. I can go back, take a look at this, start working in my room and everything else. Matter of fact, it's different catalogs too. You can bring in items from other manufacturers' catalogs and mixed them in the same kitchen. The item that I just added is not from the same catalog as this kitchen was originally designed in. So we can always go back and make those changes. This is a very simple, it's actually been around for a long time, but very simple feature. But the best part of it is it really saves you time making changes, especially when you're sitting right there in front of your customer. Tip number 14, utilizing pattern previews. I'm sure everybody out there, if I asked you to raise your hand and said, hey, I've been importing tile, but I'm never sure what it's going to look like on a wall. I don't know if my seams are going to look right. Does this tile work? Doesn't this work? Do I need to crop it better? Did you know there's actually a preview area where you can click on an image and see what it's going to look like when it's a repeating pattern? This is really important to you, number one, to improve accuracy, number two, to save a lot of time. But at the end of the day, you really just want to blow away your customer so that they buy this space from you. So if we go back over to our plan real quick, so we're going to go back over, and I am going to turn my room, and we're going to zoom in just a little bit. I want you to notice something. I have a section of wall over here where there is no tile. I did that on purpose. There's tile on this wall, but no tile on that wall. If I go back into 2020, if I wanted to add tile to that wall, we all know that if you go into the elevation, there's a feature under items, and it's called surface. If you click on surface, you can click anywhere you want as a starting point. So I can click right here in this corner. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to every point where I need to change direction. So we'll go here to here to here to here to here, to here. I'm going to change direction along my counter line. I'm going to go all the way back to where I began. I'm actually going to left click again where I started. So I end where I started. That makes a closed shape. When I right click, if you give it just a second, it's going to come up and give you a preview of tile. Now obviously this isn't the tile we're going to use. We're going to switch the type of tile. So we're going to go over to the right to where it says Texture Display. I'm going to hit on Browse or click on Browse. And if you recall this menu earlier, we used this when I'm going to make this full screen this time. We used this one earlier when we were importing the textures. Remember we were using the eyedropper to get the Faro and ball paint? Okay. Well, when you first enter this section, it'll show you all the generics in 2020. I will tell you I almost never use a generic. I almost always use real tile. If you go to User Texture Library, this is where the tiles that you have gone out. You've either taken a picture with your camera or you've right-clicked on the image online and you've saved it to your 2020. This is where you have gone in the past to save textures. But you're looking at these tiles and you're going, I don't know if I click on this tile right here, how it's going to look in the backsplash when it repeats the pattern. Well, actually, you do know how it's going to look because there is a preview button. If you look just above this image, see right here, I'm circling it on the right-hand side. This button right here is called Preview, or it's Texture Tiling. Watch what happens when I click on it. Texture Tiling comes up, and I instantly know this is not the image that I want to use. I need to crop this better so that it looks more like a repeating pattern, okay? But I can go through any of my images and click on anything. It'll show me a repeating pattern. For instance, this coastal sea pattern, this one works really well in bathrooms. If I click Mother of Pearl, this one we're zoomed in on it. It actually looks much, much better when you go ahead and you place it. Here are patterns. I'm going to move over here. You can actually just click on any pattern you want, and it shows you if the pattern's going to look good. If I click on the skull and crossbones, they're not going to look good. I need to go back and recrop the skull and crossbone pattern, probably in a larger section, so that it looks more realistic on the wall. But if I go down here to this gray tile that I just used in the bath design over the weekend, if I click on that one, that tile looks awesome. So this is a real quick way for you to know what tiles look like before you actually place them in the room. And typically what I do is I go through and I save all the ones that look awesome, and then I'll go back to like the skull and crossbone wallpaper or tile, whatever that one was. If I don't like it, I'll delete it. I'll go back in and try to get a larger image that scales more appropriately, look at it, and then save it. That way, everything in my folder I know is scaled and looks great, because at the end of the day, our goal is to really, really just wow that customer so that they buy that space from us. So that's a pretty cool feature. So hopefully in textures you learned two things today, the eyedropper and the preview button. Now let's go back over to our tips. Number 15, I added this the other day because I had someone who works like me. They literally have, 70, 80, 90, 100 catalogs loaded on their computer. And it gets to be a little bit crazy trying to keep them organized, how they've loaded, and so forth. A lot of people like to organize their catalogs by manufacturer. So if we go back over to our 2020 Live, we go to File, and we choose Preferences. There's a button here or a feature under Preferences called Catalogs. It's the second feature down. And if you recall, we've been to Preferences already today. We went to Work Area and made the elevation 3D. This time we're choosing Catalogs. Now, a lot of times people go to catalogs because they want to set their default catalog. They might be moving catalogs around and such. Here's a really cool feature you may not be aware of. See right here where it says Show by Manufacturer? If you put a check mark right there and click OK, it'll take all of your catalogs and organize them by manufacturer. So if you sell manufacturer X cabinet brand, okay, so X cabinets, and they have a framed catalog, a frameless catalog, a value series. They might have A, B, and C versions. They might have a hood catalog that's separate. They could have 2, 3, 4, 5 catalogs all by themselves. If you click Show by Manufacturer, it'll create a folder for manufacturer X. And then right below that, you'll see manufacturer Y, and then below that, you'll see manufacturer Z. And then all you have to do is click on any of those manufacturers, and then it opens up and it shows you the catalogs that are available. I think that is an awesome organizing tool. Now, I'm not going to reorganize my system because I use my system to demonstrate with, so I like mine to look like yours. But again, you would put a check mark next to Show Manufacturer, click OK, and that would reclassify or reorganize your catalogs to be much easier to use and find. The next tip in our series is going to be number 16. We are almost at the end. That's capture molding cutaways. Again, this is all about detail and accuracy. I mentioned earlier when we were creating the dashed lines and the center lines on the floor plan, I get lots and lots of questions from the design community about how to continue to improve and make floor plans and elevations more and more detailed. Well, if you want to work with molding cutaways, all you need to do is go down. I have an elevation already open. Remember, there's an elevation open at the top. It's of that wall. I'm going to actually close this for a moment, and I'm going to zoom in right here. Under the feature called Room Layout, there's an option right there, and that is called Add Side Elevation. So again, that is called Add Side Elevation. If I click on Add Side Elevation, I can click right here in that space. I can move back and forth and tell the system where I want to divide. It's literally going to cut this cabinet in half. If I moved it over here, it would cut the appliance in half. But I'm going to leave it right here, and I'm going to click, and then an arrow appears that says, when we cut this image in half, when we slice it, do you want to look left? Do you want to look right? What direction do you want to look? I want to look right. When I click on it, if I go up to my elevation now, hold on just a second, we'll pull an elevation down. You'll see that I had elevation 1, which we've already worked on. There's actually a brand new elevation, and this is the cutaway of those cabinets. All the dimensions, I can zoom in, I can bring the molding up. Matter of fact, what a lot of people do is they'll zoom in on just the molding section. They'll make notes, draw lines, whatever they need to, and then they'll take this image and they'll paste it into their multiple drawings or their multiple renderings. So you can go in and annotate this just like you would any other elevation. Pretty cool in how that works. Let's go back and we'll look at our very last tip, and I'm going to give everybody a big thank you. Very last tip is tip number 17, and it is how to access the training videos. I will tell you that I get that question all the time. As we get new people using 2020, we actually start with this tip, but it's been amazing to me, number one, how many people use our videos, but number two, how many people ask about just the basic training videos. So everybody's business is much, much better today than it was a few years ago. The biggest problem we all have out in the design community is time and, trying to find more people that can help us. So as you're bringing people in, you need to be able to onboard them fast. You don't have time to spend, training and going through all the typical programs you normally would. So you need these people to be up and running and saving you time and making you money right away. Well, if you want to bring new employees in and help them learn the basics of 2020, and then you and I and some of the other video series can help fill in the more complicated features, this is how you access it. When you're in 2020 Live, tell your new employees, simply go to Help, and under Help, there's a little button here called Watch Training Videos. Now, they're not the hour-long seminars. The hour-long seminars are that link that I showed you in the very beginning. But the Watch Training Videos, when you click on that, that'll actually take you, and let me make this full screen. I already have it open. That'll actually take you into a dashboard where you can go through all the basics in 2020. There's actually an advanced session, too. But you can go in and you can simply click back and forth in the board and say, I want to know how to, let's say, draw and edit countertops. I want to know how to radius the corner on a countertop. I'll simply click on it and the video will start playing. I actually turned it off because you're going to hear my voice start again. But the video will start playing, and if you look, it's 4 minutes and 40 seconds. So literally, your new hire could be sitting there on Saturday afternoon or 10 o'clock tonight playing around on 2020, figuring out how to do things, and they get stuck on moldings or countertops or such. They don't have to worry about calling you in the middle of the night. They don't have to try to find me, try to find somebody at 2020. All they have to do is click Help, go over to the training videos, click on whatever subject they want, and there's a short 3, 4, 5-minute video there that they can watch over and over and over again. Very well done, but again, easily accessible from 2020. We are, for once, I'm actually right on time. So I'm really pleased with that. I do want to welcome everybody to join our community if you're not already part of the community, which is www.2020spaces.com/community. All of our webinars are saved, so you can go back for the last several years just by going to www.2020spaces.com/webinars. Thank you for your time today. I cannot even begin to tell you how much we appreciate working with you, your partnership with us. We really want every consumer to have the best possible living space, the living spaces of their dreams, and we want you to be able to have the tools that help them achieve that and be able to, have a great and thriving business as you do it. So we thank you very much for partnering with us, and we look forward to future sessions like this where we can help improve your business and continue to work with you further. So thank you again for your time today, and everyone have a great rest of your day.